The night my parents told me I would never afford a house, the ceiling fan above our dining table hummed louder than their voices. At least, that's how it felt. We were sitting in our cramped two-bedroom apartment in Lahore, the same place I had grown up in, the same place where the paint peeled quietly from the corners and the balcony door never fully shut. I had just finished explaining my 5-year plan: remote work, freelancing on the side, strict savings, investments. I spoke with excitement, my hands moving as if I could physically shape the future in front of them. My father let out a short laugh, not proud, not amused, just sharp. House, he repeated, leaning back in his chair. Beta, people like us don't buy houses. We live in them, we survive in them. My mother didn't laugh. She gave me that look, the one filled with love and worry mixed together. Prices are crazy, she said gently. Even people earning double your salary can't afford property. Don't build dreams that will break your heart. The word dreams suddenly felt childish. I tried to defend myself. I talked about online opportunities, about people my age investing smartly, about discipline and planning. But with every sentence I spoke, their silence grew heavier. My father shook his head slowly. I've seen life, he said. It humbles people who think too big. That sentence stayed with me long after dinner ended. Later that night, I lay in my small bedroom staring at the cracks on the ceiling. I wasn't angry at them. They had worked hard their entire lives. They had survived inflation, job insecurity, rising rent, endless sacrifices. Their fear wasn't cruelty, it was experience, but experience can sometimes build invisible walls, and that night I felt one rise between us. A quiet wall made of doubt. For a moment, I almost believed them. Maybe I was being unrealistic. Maybe owning a house was for other families with generational wealth, connections, advantages we never had. But then another thought pushed through the fear. What if they're wrong? What if the only reason people like us don't buy houses is because we stop trying before we begin? The next morning, something inside me shifted. I didn't argue anymore. I didn't bring up property prices or financial strategies. I simply woke up earlier than usual. If their words built a wall, I decided I would build something stronger. Not with arguments, but with action. 3 years after that dinner table conversation, I stood in front of a house I wasn't supposed to be able to afford. It wasn't in the most elite area of Lahore. It wasn't surrounded by luxury cars or guarded gates. But it stood proudly on a quiet corner street, painted in soft beige, with a small balcony that caught the afternoon sun. 2 bedrooms, a modest living room, a narrow kitchen, and in the back, a tiny patch of soil that smelled like possibility. The real estate agent kept talking numbers, down payments, transfer fees, installment schedules. His voice sounded distant, like background noise. All I could hear was my father's voice from years ago. People like us don't buy houses. My hands felt cold as I stepped inside. The floor tiles were simple, slightly glossy. The walls were bare, unfinished in places. It wasn't perfect. But perfection wasn't what I had worked for. Ownership was. Are you serious about this? The agent asked, glancing at me over his clipboard. It's a big commitment, I swallowed. It was a big commitment. My savings account had taken years to build: early mornings, late nights, freelancing until my eyes burned, saying no to trips, weddings, new clothes, unnecessary comforts. Every rupee in that account carried exhaustion with it. And now, with one signature, most of it would disappear. For a brief second, doubt crept in. What if I lose my job? What if the market crashes? What if my parents were right? My chest tightened. Then I walked to the small window in what would become my bedroom. Sunlight streamed in, warm and steady. I imagined placing a bed there, a small desk near the wall, maybe a bookshelf filled with the knowledge that had carried me this far. I imagined inviting my parents over, not to argue but to show them. That vision steadied me. I'm serious, I told the agent. When I picked up the pen, my fingers trembled, not from fear but from the weight of the moment. This wasn't just a financial decision. It was a quiet rebellion against every limit I had once accepted. I signed. The ink dried quickly, but the impact settled slowly. Walking out of the office with the booking receipt in my hand felt unreal. I didn't shout. I didn't call anyone. I didn't post about it. Some victories are too sacred for noise. That evening, I returned to our old apartment like nothing had changed. My parents were watching television. My mother asked why I looked tired. My father reminded me not to overwork myself chasing unrealistic goals. I smiled softly. If only they knew, the door I wasn't supposed to open was already unlocking. The day I finally received the keys didn't feel dramatic. There were no violins playing, no cinematic slow motion, just a small office, a few signatures, and a metal key placed into my palm by a man who had no idea what it meant to me. It was heavier than I expected, not physically, emotionally. I sat in my car for almost 10 minutes staring at it. Turning it over in my fingers, this tiny piece of metal carried 3 years of sacrifice every 5 a.m. Alarm, every rejected invitation, every night I chose spreadsheets over sleep. I could have called my parents right then. I didn't. I wanted them to feel it the way I had felt their words years ago. Sudden, undeniable, unforgettable. So instead, I made a dinner reservation at a small restaurant near our apartment in Lahore. Nothing luxurious. Just familiar, safe, ordinary enough that they wouldn't suspect anything extraordinary. When we sat down, my mother adjusted her dupatta and looked at me suspiciously. "What's the occasion?" she asked. "You never insist on paying." My father leaned back in his chair. "Did you finally take our advice and slow down?" He teased. I smiled. "Something like that. We ordered their favorites." The conversation drifted from relatives to rising grocery prices to a neighbor who was planning to move. I listened quietly, feeling my heart beat harder with every passing minute. The keys felt warm in my pocket. At one point, my father said casually, "See, even that neighbor is moving because rent increased again. That's life. Owning property is not easy." The old sting returned, but this time it didn't hurt. It strengthened me. When the plates were nearly empty and the waiter cleared the table, I reached into my pocket. Slowly, deliberately, I placed the keys on the wooden table and slid them toward my father. They made a soft, scraping sound as they moved across the surface. He frowned. "What's this?" I looked at both of them. "It's the key," I said calmly, "to my house." Silence fell instantly. My mother blinked first. "Your house," she whispered. "I bought it." My father stared at me, then at the keys, then back at me again. "You mean rented?" "No, bought." The word hung in the air like something fragile and powerful at the same time. His hand trembled slightly as he picked up the key. The same man who once laughed at the idea now held proof in his fingers. "You didn't tell us," my mother said, tears already forming. "I wanted to show you," I replied softly. My father swallowed, his voice quieter than I had ever heard it. "Take us there." And in that moment I realized something. This wasn't revenge fueled by anger. This was redemption earned in silence. The drive to the house felt longer than usual, even though it was only 20 minutes from our apartment in Lahore. No one spoke much. My mother held the keys in her lap like they were made of glass. My father stared out the window, unusually quiet. When we finally stopped in front of the house, the streetlights cast a soft golden glow over the walls. It wasn't a mansion. It wasn't in the most expensive neighborhood, but it stood firm and steady, like it had been waiting for us. "This is it?" my mother asked softly. "This is it," I replied. I unlocked the gate and handed the main key to my father. "You open it." He hesitated. For a second, I saw the same man who once doubted me, but now there was something else in his eyes, uncertainty mixed with pride. The door clicked open. We stepped inside together. The house was empty, yet it didn't feel hollow. The sound of our footsteps echoed across the tiled floor. My mother slowly walked into the kitchen, running her fingers along the counter as if confirming it was real. "It smells new," she whispered. My father stood in the living room, looking around carefully, inspecting the ceiling, the windows, the walls. Not judging, just absorbing. "You really did this?" he asked quietly. "Yes, with your own money." "Yes." He sat down on the bare floor, leaning against the wall. I joined him. For a long moment, we just sat there in silence. Then he exhaled deeply. "I was afraid," he admitted. "All my life, I saw people dream big and fall hard. I didn't want that for you, I know, I said gently. I told you people like us don't buy houses, he continued, his voice rough. I thought I was protecting you. His words no longer hurt. They felt human. I didn't build this to prove you wrong, I said. I built it to prove that we can be more than our fears. My mother joined us, tears streaming freely now. We are proud of you, she said, not just because you bought a house, but because you did it without anger, without disrespect. That was the real victory. The sweetest revenge wasn't humiliation. It wasn't saying I told you so. It was watching doubt turn into belief. That night, as we stood together in the middle of the empty living room, I realized something powerful. This house wasn't just mine. It was proof that our story had changed. We were no longer the family that only survived. We were the family that built. And when I locked the door behind us later that evening, I didn't feel triumph. I felt peace.